Hello and welcome to week 14 in the psychology of adulthood. We're getting down to the wire. Only a couple weeks left in this class, and we're at the point at which the final project is going to be due. But before we get to that, here we are in chapter 14, the end of life, where we start to explore issues about the last portion of the study of the lifespan development. We're looking at healthcare. We're looking at the theories related to the processes of dying, the not the physiological, but the psychological process when somebody learns that they have a terminal diagnosis, and even when we learn about others developmentally, when we think it, just like when we talk about having children, we talk about developmentally what's happening to that child, but at the same time, the parents are aging. So, depending on the development of the child and how it aligns with the development of the parent, we see, those interactions as two lines of development are happening. So, not only in late life do we face our own demise, but we face the demise of others around us. And with increasing frequency, if there's anything that I've learned with my work with the elderly, is that they report a high frequency of losing people in their lives, friends, family, those kinds of spouses, those kinds of things. So we think about those things. We're looking at advanced directives, the thing that we can do now to assure that our wishes are held up. And we get a little bit into the rituals and the rites and funerals and that whole sociological perspective of how our society contends with end of life. It's a uh, fascinating field. If you ever have the opportunity to take a course in death and dying itself and go way in depth, it's a it's called the science is called thanatology, the study of death and dying. So that is actually a field of expertise, a field of research. Now, this assignment has hung around in many of my classes for a long time, and some people find it kind of uncomfortable, and some people find it somewhat repetitive, like, oh wow, I've done this kind of assignment before. And so what I'm asking you to do at the end of this assignment is essentially to write your obituary. And so if we look at what I'm expecting in chapter in this, we're looking at the title page, of course, coming up with a cause of death. I have enjoyed at times the creative ways in which people have come up with for them to pass away, being eaten by alligators, to whatever you want to come up with. The point is, you're writing this assignment as if it happened now. You're not saying, oh, Mark lived to a ripe old age of 102, and while he was skydiving. That's not what I'm going to be looking for. What I'm going to be looking for is right now, because the reflection component has to do with where you are right now. So we look at a cause of death. The next section, a detailed description of the family that you leave behind. Who is left? What is your relationship with those people? What have you accomplished, and what are your goals that at this point will no longer be met? Then we look into more of the funeral planning and whatnot, those kinds of activities. What kind of funeral would you like planning? And those, and what you see is the cause of death, the family, and the accomplishment and goals. That constitutes basically the elements of an obituary. But then instructions for how would you want your funeral, what type of funeral do you want, I've had people really, really go nuts on this, what music they want, what band they want playing, all of that stuff. And then a brief reflection on the process of doing this and what you gained from it. So it's really not just writing the obit that would go into the newspaper. It's really looking at this from the point of view of reflecting on the importance of being in the here and now, of our relative attachment to goals that we have and accomplishments and what those mean. And in some ways, reorienting ourselves to the reality that this could happen. Our lives could end on any day, and how would we want our lives to be remembered? So that's the reflective component. So that's this assignment for chapter 14. And there's just one more chapter next week. And then, in addition to the chapter 14 assignment, notice there's no discussions this week, is for you to submit your planning to age well. And a lot of this assignment is based on the Harvard study, the longest standing longitudinal study of human development and flourishing in history, still going on. They're up to the second generation. I think they might even be taking a look at the third generation in this group. And what they discovered in terms of healthy aging and approaching the end of life. So based on that particular model or the understanding that we get from this study, I created this assignment for you to examine your life right now, your plans for the future in terms of aging well. And we here on the task itself, let's take a look at the course book here. The part one is looking at relationships. That's a lot about what came out of the Harvard study. Look at the quality of these relationships. And I give you a bunch of thought questions here. These are not questions that I necessarily want you to write and then answer. This is what I want you to consider brainstorming, coming up with ways. If you want to do that, if you want to go through, like I think some of them don't really lend themselves to that, but just if you want to do a, point by point, that's fine. This is doesn't have to be an essay, but we're looking at, am I happy in my primary relationships? What is the quality of my relationship with my parents, my siblings, my other blood relatives, these kinds of things? What is the quality of my friendships? Who can I count on right now? Is it easy for me to come up with a name, contact information for, in case of an emergency, do this? Do I harbor negative feelings about exes or people that have hurt us? Am I lonely? Do I have connections with my neighbors? Who do I know in my community? What about community events and other connection in our community? Important qualities of my community that make me stay here. Do I have friends outside of work? What would I do with my time if I didn't have to work? What hobbies do I want to get into? Do I have activities that I currently do with friends outside of work? I'm 60 years old and approaching the end of my working career. Not quite sure. It may be 2 years away. It may be 5 years away. It may be 7 years away. I'm not really. But eventually I got to transition to plan B. And these are actually things that I am currently, these are questions I'm asking, I'm making sure I've got all this down to make that transition into the next part of my life. So this assignment is actually what I'm living right now in terms of anticipating very few years when I would not necessarily be working full time. Then the course book gives you some guidance in terms of the organization of this paper. Please do this. It makes it easy to read. You're able to communicate your ideas very clearly to me. So we have right here at the bottom of page 266, organized with bold headings: family, friends, community, activities, and post-work identity. Then we get into financial planning. Now, where this part of the assignment comes from is in my sociology class. My sociology class, when we talk about aging from a sociological perspective, we talk about our society's perceptions of, I'm going to say Social Security, but I'm not referring to Social Security Administration, our safety nets that exist for when we transition from a steady flow of income into maybe a more fixed income, or relying on savings and investments, those kinds of things. This particular section, I'm going to say, is somewhat optional. And I mean it is optional because you do not have to reveal to me your actual financial situation. In the rubric, this whole part is only worth 20% of the paper. If you write a paragraph and say, I went through all of this and I found out I probably should save more money, and you just draw the conclusions, that will be sufficient. If you want to include all of the activities, the going to the mortuary table to predict when you're going to die, calculating your current strategy for saving and how much money you will need based on predicted expenses when you do retire, those kinds of things. I urge you to do this anyway. I urge you to do this and find a financial planner, one with your bank, or usually insurance companies have those kinds of things, and have them help you develop a real plan to put yourself in a good position for when you retire. For the sake of this assignment, you do not have to tell me your income. You don't have to tell me what your specific plans are. I will not be requiring that. I will ask you, however, to tell me at the end, truth or not, really, do you anticipate that this is going to be a problem, or do you need to make some changes right now that will help you to live better when you're no longer working? Okay, so here we have chapter 14, focusing on essentially death and dying, and the kind of expanded obituary assignment. And then we have the big assignment, which is the big final assignment, which is aging well. The first part about relationships and community, that's the gut of it. That's most of it. And then that financial planning, just, I feel it, I didn't engage in this early enough in life, and I guess I'm just taking every opportunity I can to pass on um, the wisdom of good financial planning early in life. Wasn't I started it later? I didn't start it too late. Things seem to be okay, but they're not nearly where they could have been in my own life had I followed very early advice that I got. If I had actually done that, my financial world would be very different. So that's it for this week. We have chapter 14 and that final assignment on aging well due this week. So there's no discussions, so that will not be part of this week. I wish you luck with these assignments. If there's any questions, of course, email me or post a question to the class discussion board. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.